How's it going, everyone? In this video, I want to share with you all a little bit about how I put together videos in my How to Sound Like series. So I will use How to Sound Like Scriabin as an example. It's the most recent How to Sound Like video that I put out. And before I got started, I really focused on the why. Why was I interested in doing this video at this particular time? And for me, I had a personal interest in the mystic chord, which I knew about and was familiar with, but I never really spent time studying it, let alone studying a lot of Scriabin's music. Up until this point, I studied formally only 2 pieces by Scriabin. I was also responding to expressed interest from viewers. I've been seeing a lot of requests for this particular video during the past 2 years. And I have not made a How to Sound Like video in a very long time, so I have been meaning to return to this series. And Scriabin in particular is a bit of an underrated composer in my opinion, so I wanted to shed some light on his music. I can roughly divide the different stages that I go through leading up to the completion of a video into 5 stages: immersion, research, writing, filming, and editing. And of these 5, I would say research and editing take the most time. In the first stage, I'm focusing mostly on listening to as much music as possible. So in this case, I spent a lot of time listening to Scriabin's music on Spotify and YouTube. And as I was doing this, I was also narrowing down a point of focus. I decided to focus on his early to middle periods, and all throughout this time, I was taking some mental notes in terms of identifying certain elements of his music. I do most of my research online. These days, there are just so many great resources out there, and 2 that I rely on regularly are Script and Grove Music online, because there are just so many biographies, so many articles and documents on there. I don't spend too much time on one particular book or document. I try to go through as much as possible for the sake of time, and I'm taking notes as I go. I also look for documentaries, and another important thing that I do is I open up this conversation and this topic with colleagues, my friends, and mentors and teachers. I find that I learn a lot just through simple conversation. In terms of note-taking, I utilize both a traditional notebook and a Google Doc page where I can jot down things that I notice and I want to remember in terms of Scriabin's musical style or different things about his pieces or his life. So in each video, I include a section where I'm arranging Happy Birthday in the style of said composer. And in order to do this, I first take my notes and I get organized. In this case, I just wrote out elements of Scriabin's music that I want to include in this arrangement. Then I go to the piano. I try to set my notes aside a little bit and improvise and write out broad strokes so that I begin to come up with ideas. And this process is usually quite quick in the beginning because I am so ready to write something in reverse because I've been taking in so much. And I think the immersion part of things really helps with this process. Then, of course, I write out the arrangement on manuscript paper. I take it over to Sibelius as well. And another thing that I do in the writing phase is to compile text of highlighted material to generate the script. In most of these videos, what I script out is only for the voiceovers, because the other sections I just turn on the camera and I film as much, and the refining of what I'm saying happens in the editing. But for the voiceovers, I just write out everything, and as I'm recording, sometimes I'll change the sentence structure, or I will omit or add certain words based on what's comfortable for me speech-wise. Moving on to the filming and recording portion of things, there's so much work that goes in prior to hitting record, such as setting up the lights, the microphones, and getting the piano tuned. I've been trying to put a little more effort into these areas over the years because when I first started making these videos, I would just use natural light. I had a handheld recorder, and sometimes I wouldn't even have the piano tuned, but I'm trying to do my best to keep the quality level a bit higher in terms of production for these sections of these videos. So once that is all done, I have a list of notes that will keep me organized while I'm filming, and then I film in blocks of 30 minutes, mostly because otherwise my camera will overheat. And because the microphones are set up, this is also when I record the voiceovers. In this case, I actually filmed 3 separate times. Once for analyzing his music, once for coming up with the arrangement, a little bit of the behind the scenes look at that, and then once for the actual performance of the arrangement. Also in this phase, I am downloading different documentary clips, things that I want to include that I think will help with the flow of the video and can provide more information about Scriabin in this case. Now moving on to editing, which takes so many hours. I do my editing in Final Cut Pro X using a laptop with a trackpad. This is just how I'm used to working, if any of you are interested. And once I have all of the files somewhat organized in the file, I just dump it all in into the software. I split it into general sections: historical overview, the preview, musical analysis, the reconstruction and writing of the arrangement, and then the final performance. And from there, I start deleting all of the obvious bits that I am going to omit, such as turning on the camera, bits of time where I'm not saying anything. And after that, my timeline will look something like this. So as you can see on the right, I started trimming things, and on the left, I just have full blocks of recorded material. So if you look at the yellow line, it's at 57 minutes. So you can tell that there's just a lot of footage here. I think it was well over 3 hours, and I'll just continue going over all of this and cutting out a lot of material. Now moving on to the second part of editing, I am just continuing to delete unnecessary sections with the flow and priorities of the video in mind. So sometimes I'll have a section that I really think is interesting and that I like, but I'll end up deleting it because it's disrupting the flow of the whole video, and in the large scope of things, it's not as necessary as, let's say, another section that I decide to keep. I also add special effects and text during this time. Nowadays, I've been relying mostly on things that are available to me within Final Cut, whereas before I think I did a lot of graphics and additional material in Photoshop, and then I would import them in. I will also spend a lot of time refining the audio levels and the transitions, and this is a look at the timeline near the end of the video. So as you can see, there are many things added. There are a lot of things that I did to edit the transitions. I have a lot of miscellaneous graphics, and some things that you don't see here are keyframes where I would move a certain object in the screen to another portion, and this to me just animates lightly what you see on the screen, and I spend a lot of time doing this. And that is all. After I have this done, I export it, I back it up to a hard drive, and then I just upload it onto YouTube. And that's pretty much the process for each video. Now in this section, I'm going to spend some time answering questions from the last post, starting with, have you ever considered documenting your process learning a new instrument? I definitely have, especially with guitar. I've been meaning to spend some time learning the instrument. I haven't been so successful as to being able to carve out a specific amount of time to do this, but it's something that I definitely want to try in the future. If not with the guitar, maybe a wind instrument. I don't have one particularly in mind, but it's something that I would love to try. The next question from Cuckoo. Now what's the plan? Do you have any momentum and or the feeling of working towards a goal, distant or immediate? Or is it all chaos and sporadic? This is a great question. The immediate plan is to get through as many deadlines as possible in a timely manner. I have different things coming up for me. Some are finishing up writing for commissions. Some involve recording and playing material, and some involve teaching, where I'm refining lesson plans for different workshops, that sort of thing. And of course, I have some plans for the YouTube channel, so those are self-imposed deadlines where I want to finish a video by a certain month or a certain week. Sometimes I am working towards a specific goal in mind, let's say music or performance, or I want to better my skills in improvising in this particular style, or I want to have a better handle on this harmonic idea, or whatever it is. I'll have something like that, but I would say these days it's more vague. I want to improve myself on each project. So let's say in the realm of making a video, each video that I do, I want to improve on the last one that I do. Each piece that I write, or there's so many different kinds. So let's say each piano piece that I write, I want to improve on the last one that I did. Or actually, if I were to think of something much more specific and zoned in, I am spending the next few months, I would say, focusing on learning the DAW world and learning how to produce more and handle MIDI orchestration, all of that. I've been given a specific opportunity to learn more about this, which I will share with you all very soon in the form of a video or two. So there's that. But the third part of the question, is it all chaos and sporadic? Pretty much. I think in certain periods, I'm lucky enough to have deadlines that make the chaos a little more organized in terms of having a timeline. But sometimes I really feel like I'm just in a pool of chaos, for sure. Here's another one that I probably will have to address separately and organize my thoughts around. This simply says an inquiry into the principles of musical genres. I wouldn't hesitate to define it as philosophy of music proper. This is something that I would love to spend some time talking about, because I have in the past, and I'm continuing to do so, been immersing myself in different genres and different composers, and I think there's a lot to talk about there. So I will leave that to the future. The next question here, how do you negotiate going from times when you have a lot of free practice time to times where your practice is constrained? For a lot of the pandemic, I was able to practice 5 to 6 hours daily, at least for a few months, so on and so forth. For me, it's quite difficult whenever I have periods of time when I cannot practice as much. I went through a period of exactly that very recently, where from late November into the new year, for a solid period of 6 or 7 weeks, I was working on a very new project in a new environment. I'm still here, by the way, with new people, new type of work. It was just very overwhelming, and I really had zero time to practice, and I'm not exaggerating with this. Usually when I say I have no time to do something, I probably have a few extra hours a day to do something, but in this case I really did not. Just getting enough sleep was a major issue. So during this time, I just let go of the idea of, okay, it's bothering me that I can't practice, and I just looked forward to the time when things would be different and I could maybe compensate, not too much because there's only so much you can do, but I can compensate a little bit for all of the lost time. So that's what I did. As soon as that project was done, I spent about a week just concentrating on piano and practicing and doing what I need to do to keep up what I do musically. So I would just say in terms of how I negotiate going from time to time, just be strategic about it in the larger picture. I know that's difficult to do, but yeah, if you can't do it so much here, make up for it a little bit here, if that makes sense. Next one, how do you advise people to pick things that are the right level for them? My tendency has always been to pick things that were way too hard for me and would take me months and months, not to master, but to just be able to get through. This is a very great question. I think a lot of it is trial and error, because sometimes you don't quite know if something is way, way, way beyond your level or if it's actually just challenging enough. I think the telling sign is that once you start working on it, if your progress is extremely, extremely slow to the point where it's not enjoyable or it is way too much work or way too much time for what you're trying to do, I think those signs will indicate whether or not you should move on to a different project or a different piece. Of course, if you get advice from an external source, whether it's your teacher or, I don't know, a colleague, someone that can give you feedback from a bit of a distance, that is the most advisable. But this is definitely difficult because I always also advise that when you're working on something, you choose something that is slightly challenging. But I think the key word is slightly, because if it's too challenging, then again, maybe you are not spending your time wisely and you're not getting as much out of it, because you won't learn so much if you're tackling something that is just way beyond what you can handle at any given moment. Okay, so I will wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. It really means a lot to me. It really helps me keep things going, especially for the YouTube channel. Thank you to everyone who has been putting in questions in these posts. If you have any questions for upcoming videos or upcoming Q&As, please write them down below. If there are not enough, I will focus on another topic and then tack them on, kind of like how I did for this video. Otherwise, I will dedicate a video to just Q&A, and we'll see what works based on each post. So thank you again, and I hope everyone is doing well. I will see you very soon.